Okay, hello, welcome. This is the Table 11 New Features webinar series. We're doing a little webinar about each chunk of new features that came in Table 11 because there was a lot of changes with the new software. So today I am going to go over a couple of things, but just real quick before that, I do have a follow-up email for the webinar. I'm going to make some activities to go along with this kind of stuff, send some training resources. So you can send a quick private message in the chat to make sure that you're on that list to get the follow-up email. But the webinar itself is going to be posted on Anatomage Share, so you'll be able to find everything there as well. So this webinar series is going over all of the changes to functional anatomy. Functional anatomy on the table got a huge overhaul in Table 11 with the addition of 6 new simulations and changes to multiple existing simulations, updates, new features, etc. So this is the third and second to last webinar in this series, and this one is going over cardiology and catheterization. So these are two simulations that existed in tables 10 and 9, but they've been updated and changed. So might be a little bit familiar. One more webinar left in the series, which is going to talk about homeostasis, neurology, facial expressions, respiratory, and renal physiology are all already posted on Anatomage Share if you missed those. Okay, so today we're going to talk about catheterization and cardiology. So these two existing simulations, kind of on the same theme here, this cardiovascular health and healthcare simulations. And we do have some little activities to go along with each one. So we'll get those up on Anatomage Share. We'll get those emailed to you so you have kind of a guide as you explore these. First thing I'm going to look at is catheterization. So I'm going to turn off my video and then switch my screen share. Now I will give a fair warning. Your tables are a lot more powerful than my office computer. So if you notice it looking a little bit slow, that is a reflection on my laptop, not a reflection on the entire program. Okay. So here we have catheterization. So saw someone just hopped in, webinar on the changes to the catheterization simulation and the cardiology simulation. Both of these simulations live in the same place, which is our functional anatomy menu. So if you are looking for them on your table, the first thing you're going to do is from that home menu, when you first open the program, we're going to go to functional anatomy. And then in functional anatomy, you'll see our collection of simulations. So lots of new ones in here, 6 additions in Table 11. We added respiratory, renal, facial, homeostasis, injection, and developmental, and then some familiar faces as well. So catheterization right here is the one we're going to look at first. So this may have been something you explored in previous versions of the table, and it may not have been something that ever crossed your path. But when you open this program, it loads uh, our Asian female patient model. And you can go into this little ECG dialog to bring up an ECG because in a catheterization procedure, our patients' hearts tend to be beating. So this little ECG window is where you can bring up this dialog that will make the heart beat. Again, my table or my computer's going through a lot, so it'll be a little bit more of a fluid heartbeat on your table. So this is welcome to stay open, but because we have limited screen space, I'm going to take it away. So the ECG dialog here to get that heartbeat. Next to it, you have your catheter. That is where you're going to go to find our existing simulations. So we have 4 different catheterization procedures here. They're listed out on the left-hand side. PCI, coronary angiogram, ventriculography, and right heart cath. Selecting each of these will give you different pathways available. So there is 2 ways to do the ventriculography on the table. You can go from the right femoral artery to the heart or the right radial artery to the heart. So for example, if I'm doing a PCI and I want to go from the radial artery, I would select my procedure, select my path, tap OK, and then the table is going to load up what we need for that procedure. Which procedure you do, it's going to depend what we're looking at here. Okay, and the steps for a procedure are what they are. So you'll see here the different steps listed on the left. And you can click through these one by one. So the first step is to insert the needle with the syringe. The next step is to remove the syringe, etc. You can step through these by tapping them, or there's a little up and down arrow, which is going to move through these steps. So, I mean, realistically, with your students, what you're doing at here is you're discussing these procedural steps for this really kind of popular procedure. And we can kind of see those procedure steps happening over here, of course, on your table. Bigger is better. You'll be able to see these a little bit larger. Now, when you reach a step, so I just removed the guide wire and the dilator, our next step is going to be to insert and place the guiding catheter. You'll see once I hit a step where I am placing a catheter or removing a catheter, we get the ability to interact with this catheter length slider here. So dragging that slider up is going to move that catheter into the heart. So it might be a little bit tricky to see here because we're all looking at my little computer, but on your table, it'll be nice and large. As I drag that slider up and down, that catheter is moving into the heart. Now you can look at this two ways. You can look at it in our patient transparency view, or you can click on your angiogram view down at the bottom here next to the catheter. And what that will do is it's going to give you this. This is what changed. This is what's new in table 11 here. And I'm just going to move our step dialog off of the screen so you can see. You see on the right-hand side here, we have this kind of CT angiogram view. So that's what's new here. Catheterization hasn't really changed outside of the addition of this view. So as I am moving that catheter up and down, I can see it moving, and the students are also able to adjust the perspective and the kind of angular rotation of this C-arm as well. So you can pop it between some really popular positional views like anterior posterior or right anterior oblique, etc. If you want to see some different perspectives. So I'll just keep moving through this procedure here. I just place the catheter and then I can see it on my patient view and my angiogram view, and then moving on to the next step. Now, this is a balloon catheter that we're placing. And then we are inflating the balloon in the next step. So you will have, and I'll bring this back out so we can see. When you are doing something like inflating a balloon inflation is something that we're able to visualize here. So this is what's new in catheterization. If there's any kind of questions about how to interact with this, catheterization is nice in the sense that it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's only the procedures have their steps and we work through them one at a time. We get this kind of unique patient view. And then we get our angiogram view on the right. Okay. So I just exited the simulation, which is why we went back to normal. And now I am going to pause my heart rhythm and switch. We're going to look now at cardiology, unless there's any questions about catheterization, but those are the big changes there in the addition of this. It's right down here at the bottom if we need a little bit of a guide. This guy right here is what gives you access to that new perspective that we added. Now, cardiology has been around for a little while. It's one of the more popular simulations on the table, and it got a makeover as well in table 11. So this, if you're a big fan of cardiology, might have been a little bit of a shock to the system that it looks so different, but all of the core tools and features that we know to be in cardiology, they are still here. So when you open up cardiology, you'll see something like this. You have your heart on the left side, the heart will be beating. And now on the right side, the ECG is changed. We're looking at a 12 lead. That is not to say that the single lead, the rhythm lead is gone. It's just not the default anymore. So if 12 lead is not your speed and you'd like to look at that default or that rhythm lead rather, there is, and I'm just pulling up a little arrow because there's lots of buttons over here on the right, but this one right here, these two actually are the two that control whether you're looking at a 12 lead or a rhythm lead. So if you would like to switch from one to the other, you just click to the one that you want and that lead is going to update. So still have your ECG. In addition to the two types of leads, we have our 12 lead, we have our rhythm lead. We've also added a Weir's diagram. So if you want to look more specifically at the different pressures and volumes of the different components of the heart during different, during the normal sinus heart rhythm, you have that as well. So those three icons on the bottom right, those are some new things that we've added. If you don't need these bells and whistles and you want to deal with regular old cardiology like you know it and love it, you just want to choose that original rhythm lead and it's going to look the same it did before. Okay. Then kind of working right to left here, we have our heart rate slider bar. That, if we've used cardiology in the past, we probably remember. That works the same as it did before. You can drag your heart rate up to 150 beats per minute and you can drag it down to 40 beats per minute. Again, your table's a little smoother than mine, so I know it looks kind of choppy, but that's because of my computer and the Zoom meeting. It's not going to look like that for you. It's going to look really nice. So your heart rate slider bar, the same as it always was, just kind of in a new location, but it says heart rate under it. And then next to it, we have our pause ECG and our scroll through ECG. These are two tools that we've had before. They're just, again, in a new place now. So if you would like to kind of work through the heartbeat step by step, the orange pause button is what pauses the ECG. And then the slider bar to the right is what allows us to put the heart, I want to go to the peak of my QRS complex now and look inside the heart and see, okay, what valves are closed. Where is that cardiac conduction signal? We can interact and then we can move. We can say, all right, I want to finish and move to the top here and see, okay, now this valve has opened. So these are, you can move through your step by step, or you can just let it play. Moving further to the left from that, we have some kind of ECG view icons. Now, if you're happy with the ECG the way it is, you could just not worry about these. There's just a couple of different ways to view an ECG. So right now we're viewing it in this kind of resetting mode where our ECG is going to the end and then it's starting over. If we toggle on this ECG scroll in table 9, this was called ECG scroll, or in table 10, you'll see the ECG is just, it's continuing to scroll. If I make my heart rate faster, we see that kind of tick up and this, so it's just a view of the ECG, nothing crazy. So that's this one here. It's like a little green ECG wave with an arrow because it's scrolling through the ECG. To the right of it, you see an icon that you actually can't interact with. Some of the times in cardiology, especially as we add more features, there's conditional tools, things that are only available under certain conditions. When you're in a normal heart rhythm, normal sinus rhythm, there's no need for this icon because this icon that is grayed out is about comparing the abnormal ECG wave to the normal wave. So saying, what should this look like? Well, we're right on it with our heart right now, but if we switched out of my normal sinus heart rhythm and we switched into something like a second degree AV block, we can turn that little tool on so that we have the shadow of a regular heart rhythm in blue behind our abnormal ECG wave in green. So the whole point of that icon on the right is if you want your students comparing what is happening in this AV block compared to what I should expect to see if there was not an AV block happening. If you don't like that overlay, that interface of having to look at two ECGs at once, that's why that is an optional feature that you can turn off or on. We don't know what you're going to want all of the time, but you can toggle that off and on as you'd like. So that's what those two are for if you want the ECG to scroll, or if you're looking at an abnormal heart rhythm and you would like to compare it to the normal heart rhythm, that overlay. Fancy, I know. All right. Working our way. This is a little icon with a turtle on it. Our turtle, the universal sign for slow, that's just how you place that heartbeat in slow motion. So this is something we could do in table 10, but it was a little checkbox that said slow motion. And we decided to get a hieroglyphic with it. So you have a little turtle now, but when that turtle is on, your heart rhythm will go in slow motion. So useful if you really want to break down what's happening inside the heart. Moving on down the line here, after slow motion, we have blood flow and um, cardiac conduction. So I'm just going to set us back to a normal heart rhythm here so that we can interact with these, normal rhythm. So here's something new that's happened in table 11 as well, just be aware of. When you switch the rhythm, the heart is going to kind of come back to this baseline view of having all of the chambers visible. So for example, if I removed the right ventricle and I removed the right auricle and right atrium, and I wanted to look at the heart like exactly as I have it here, but under a different rhythm, we would want to utilize presets. So presets are something that if you've been working with the table for a little bit, you might know it's like a preset on a radio station. I have it exactly where I want it, and I'm going to save it so that if my radio station changes, I don't have to go scrolling through to get back to where I was. I can go back to my preset. That's the same thing here on the table. So if you have a view of the heart you like, you can go ahead and use that plus sign to save it as a preset. And what that means is if you change the heart rhythm, so I change from normal sinus and I take it to a inferior MI, well, the heart's going to update so I can see that inferior MI. But if I want to see it in that view I had, that's why we have those presets so that you can take it back. So a preset, when you save it, that is about the view of the heart. It is not about the rhythm. So I can look at my preset 7 here in an inferior MI, and then I can switch to a ventricular fibrillation. And if I want to see that preset 7 in VFib, I can go back to preset 7. So when you change the rhythm, how the heart looks is going to change as well. That is something that is different. You can get around that. If you like what you have, you can get around that with presets. That's what they're there for. If you need a little bit of a reminder on how presets work and how to export and import them, the intermediate course on our training portal on Anatomage Share walks through all of that. So that is a free training course you'll have available if you need a little bit of a revamp on how presets work. But okay, got ahead of myself. We were talking about these two icons down here. So you have the cardiac conduction icon, that's going to be on by default because as the heart is beating here, we're seeing that nerve impulse go from the SA node to the AV node down the Purkinje fibers and the bundle branches, etc. If you don't want that, that is optional. You can turn that off. That's what the one that looks like nerves is for. And then to the left of that, you have a blood flow icon. That's all about putting this animated blood flow through the heart. So if you want to see what the heart looks like with this red and blue blood moving through it, that's what the one to the left of it is for. Blood flow is one of those icons that might be situationally available. You might not be able to see blood flow in every single arrhythmia. So if this icon is ever grayed out, that just means it's not available right now. And that will happen because there's so many different ways to view cardiology. Okay, and I've kind of been doing this through line the entire time, but there are new heart conditions and arrhythmias available. There's two ways to grab those. You can grab them from that drop down at the top, which is what I have been using so far. We can look through here and see all of these different MIs, which are all new. All of these myocardial infarctions, these are new. When you select an MI, the area that's affected is going to get kind of dark. So in this anterolateral myocardial infarction, I'm seeing more of an effect here on the left ventricle and a little bit of the right ventricle, but that's mostly the affected area. Whereas if my patient had a high lateral MI, now it's up here and we can see what vessel is going to be involved in that. So that's, or we can, grab what we need. So that is something that's new. You can switch between those different arrhythmias and heart conditions up here or down here. These are the same menus, so it's just kind of two different places to get it because the table's so big. So if you're standing over here on the left side and you want to see a third degree AV block, you could click this guy. If you're standing more on the right, you could also click this guy. The options are the same. And yeah, if you're is it possible, question I just got, to put the 12 lead on the same side of the screen as the heart model? Yes, you can. That's actually what I'm doing right now. You're only seeing it on one screen. I have two monitors, and the left one has my like webinar slideshow on it, and the right side has this. So that would be a tool that is not specific to cardiology, but is actually available anytime on the table, which is the ability to adjust your screen settings. So in the Anatomage table settings down here, we have this little icon that looks like three rectangles, and these are your screen settings. This is where you go if you need to place the table in vertical mode, but it's also where you go if you would like to send the entire two screen table down to just one half. So if you are only projecting the left half, you would want to click this icon pointing to the left. If you would like to only have this on the right half, you could turn off the left half and switch it over to the right side. So that's where you would want to go. And you can do that in anything, actually. This is also the menu where we go to switch to vertical mode, but in table 11, functional anatomy is not compatible with our vertical mode. Functional anatomy can only be used in the horizontal mode, which is why you'll see it kind of not available in here. Okay, team, that is what's changed in cardiology and catheterization. I do like to send a little follow-up email. I've made a catheterization activity I'd love to send your way. We have some activities that use cardiology, like our vital signs activity and our ECG interpretation activity. I can link you to those. If you would like to send a private message with your email in the chat, I'll get those over to you. If there's any other questions about these changes, let me know. And then later today, this webinar will be up on Anatomage Share so that if you need to rewatch it or show a friend, you can. And then our homeostasis webinar is the last in the series. It will be coming out soon whenever Maxim hosts it, and that will be on Anatomage Share as well. So, and then stay tuned. We also are updating our training portal online to have this additional information. So our training portal just got updated today with some additional videos about things like custom quiz questions and ultrasound and schematics. And we'll be releasing a course all about functional anatomy over the next month too. So, but okay, if there's any questions, let me know. If there's not any questions, you are free. I'm going to stop my little recording. Bye, future people.